Hello and welcome to The Dungeon. My name is Dan and in today's video we've been playing through Outward. So this is a brand new IP by a studio I've not really heard of before called Nine Dots Studio. So this is definitely a much smaller title than what a lot of people are familiar with. I wouldn't exactly call it an indie project, more sort of double A in between triple A project. So they definitely have quite a few staff working on it, but it certainly does not have the budget that other titles would benefit from. I would say it is a medieval style fantasy RPG with a lot of survival aspects to it. Now, I wanted to like this game, I really did. I thought, I've not really played an RPG in a while, this could be really up my jam. I'm not that familiar, I will say, with survival games. So having to manage things like your thirst meter, hunger, fatigue, the cold, that was all quite new to me, and I was looking forward to trying that out. And I haven't any issues with that per se, but I do have a lot of issues with Outward. Let's get in there. First of all, and this was a conscious decision, this isn't a game where your main character is the chosen one. Not at all. You're just a regular person just trying to go about your life and try to make a fortune, I guess. The game starts off with you and your friend surviving a shipwreck. You wash up on shore, butt naked apart from maybe a loincloth, and all your fortune is gone. Worse than that, when you get to your lighthouse and you sleep, the next morning the townspeople say that you owe them a shit ton of money because you survived and lots of other people didn't. The first few quests then going forward are simply to get rid of your debts. After that, what then happens? Now, I don't want to spoil it or anything because there's not really much to spoil, but effectively, three characters go off into the world and they each say to you, you should join me at a certain place, and from there, the rest of the game begins. So, in terms of story, it is very much character driven and you deciding how you want to go on from there. So, on the one hand, I do like the fact that it tries to do things differently. So, it doesn't do the whole Skyrim thing about prophecies or makes you some kind of bigwig in this world. You're just a regular guy and you have your own things to do. But on the other hand, it does feel a little rotorless. You don't seem to have any particular main goal in front of you apart from just surviving. Well, if I wanted to survive after I paid off my 150 silver, why wouldn't I just stay at my lighthouse for the rest of my life? The game kind of assumes that you probably want adventure in your life, and it's saying to you, go out and get it. I mean, I'm sure most people playing it do want an adventure, but why does the character in this game want that? Anyway, that's a rather small point. So, I didn't like this game at all. Let's start with the beginning character creation. God damn, this looks ugly. Look at that. So when you're creating your character, you can be either male or female. Okay, fine. Or three different races: fantasy white guy, fantasy black guy, and I guess fantasy Far Eastern guy. Apparently, in one bit of dialogue, it's told to me that the Far Eastern guys are very good sailors and spend most of their life at sea. Bearing in mind I am also at the time a Far Eastern guy when I choose this character, feels a bit odd that he's telling me about my own people, but never mind. Now, I was hoping for an RPG with stats, as in strength, dexterity, charisma, that type of thing. This one, character creation, nope. You are literally a blank slate, nothing at all to show you've had a life prior to this moment with your own strengths and weaknesses. Okay, fine, let's move on. After character creation and after the shipwreck, you're given a bit of chance to wander on the beach, gather some supplies together, eat some seaweed, drink some salty ocean water, and just have a play around. It's here that you learn to do basic things such as gathering supplies from various plants, taking wood, and various other resource management. When you're ready to leave the village with your own backpack, water skin, and a weapon, you can then go out into the big bad wilderness and try to make your money. So, second problem, These damn loading screens. That seems to be a problem with a lot of games in 2019. I think this is the third or fourth time I mentioned it in a video since doing this series. Why does a game so ugly take so long to load? Why is there not one but two loading screen indicators on this screen you see in front of you? I am playing this version, as you can see, on the PlayStation 4, so I can understand consoles not being at the high power level to be able to process the graphics as fast as, say, a PC. But this does not look anywhere near as nice as, say, Anthem. I think the character models are particularly horrid looking, very cartoony. You know, when I first played it, I thought, this is a game from like 15 years ago, like maybe on the PS2 or a very cheap title on the PS3. Getting up close to, say, the walls or the floor and the detail really does suffer in this. Now, taking a step back, there are some nice landscapes you can have a look, particularly with things like sunsets, where the light shimmers on the ocean. So that is something, but up close and personal, no. Just try and play this game a little far from the screen. One nice feature I did notice in terms of its graphics, well, not so much its graphics, but something it chose to include, is the moon, which looks to be broken in some capacity, with lots of moon debris just hanging around it. Nice touch. I've not really seen it before in a game, particularly not a fantasy one, so yeah, I'll give it a point for that, if nothing else. In terms of sound, all the areas have their own distinct track to them, which I guess is standard and nice, although because I went back to the same one so often in the first town, the jaunty pipework of that one started to really get under my skin after a while. Oh, and sometimes the game decides to switch off the music completely. I was going through this swamp-like zone and just silence. I didn't know if this was intentional or if the game had broken. Voice acting is kind of all over the place, where it sounds like some actors phoned it in from a large echoing cavern, and that's even if they actually say what is written in the dialogue. Your character can't speak for this, which is fine. I don't really need a voiced character in my RPGs, and I have no doubt they too would also not be saying what I choose for them to say, so let's just leave that one as it is. Alright, that's enough of the presentation. Let's talk about the main crux of the game, which is the survival gameplay, starting off with the combat. So, the combat I don't mind so much. This is very much a severe game. Only one difficulty mode, which is difficult, so once you go into the main wilderness and you have a weapon, you have to have something before you can go. You'll start encountering some creatures, so hyenas, these big chocobo-like things, bandits, whatever. And should they notice you, they will automatically go in to attack, at which point you have to defend yourself. So drawing your weapon, which can be a laborious process, particularly if it's in your backpack, so you need to take it from your backpack to your main hand, which is all manual. You can do shortcuts, then you fight. In terms of controller setup, you have a light attack, you have a heavy attack, you have a block, and you have a dodge, jump, leap type thing. Definitely practice using these, particularly with the various weapons you have. Also, I do like the feature in that if you drop your backpack, your leaps become a lot better and you become a lot faster, so you become more agile and you're able to slip away from enemy attacks. At that point, it then becomes a game of watching their movements, trying to see when they're about to attack, so sidestepping, waiting for your opportunity, and then going in for the strike. Luckily, you can see their health, so you know just as much it takes for them to go down. Now, that's how melee combat works, and you do have a good range of weapons that you can use, so swords, hammers, spears, they're quite useful for reach, polearms, all that kind of stuff. A one-on-one enemy, particularly in the starting area, is fine, as long as you know where you are in regards to them, which sounds strange I know, but you can control the camera, so definitely don't get them out of the screen. You should be alright. The problem comes is when there's 2 or more of them, because often the enemies do hunt in packs, as you'd expect from a survival game, so having more than one enemy at a time can be tricky. All in all, the melee combat was one of my favourite parts of the game. So, range combat. You can get bows in this game, I would advise you get them, as well as guns, which is nice too. Range is very difficult if you're not locked on to your opponent, because you have a lock-on feature, which I think is very incongruous with the whole survival game, having an automatic lock-on like some kind of laser tag system. But hey, that's just a nitpick. Without using the lock-on, which is optional, it can be very tricky to move your thumbstick or whatever and getting those shots off. I think probably mouse and keyboard is better for that, so that might just be me using a controller instead because I'm a console peasant at heart. Using the lock-on though, and it becomes funny as you literally become an arrow machine gun with like 100% accuracy, just shooting until they go away. But this also applies to enemies using their ranged weapons as well, so definitely try and take them out first if you're taking on a large group. Stealth is also a viable tactic as well, so you can actually get into crouch position, you can tiptoe towards an enemy, get your big halberd out and whack them with an ability, which does a good deal of damage, as you'd expect. The problems with stealth in this game is that you don't have a good indicator for when you're in stealth and when you're not. So you can crouch and you can walk past them, say 20 feet, and even if you're in their eye line, you can still sneak past and they won't see you. But if you get a bit closer, even when their back is to you, they can somehow know you're there, and I guess it depends on the enemy. Hyenas got very good at being able to sniff me out, probably due to their noses, and because I've been wandering around in seawater for the past half hour. So there's no kind of indicator within regards to if it can detect you or not, like you might get in Skyrim or something like that, you know, the eye, the open eye, whatever. And I get it, it's supposed to be a fantasy simulator, so those kind of meters aren't in here, despite the fact that you have a automatic bow lock-on. But anyway, what I don't like is there's not enough visual cues to tell me, or audio cues to tell me, when an enemy goes from doesn't know you're there to I'm breathing down your throat. With animals this is kind of passable, but with human enemies this is really weird, because I don't mean to keep saying this, but in other games human villains talk a lot and they'll say to each other and have conversations, and when they think someone is looking at them or trying to get close to them, they'll get a little paranoid, they'll start wandering around more. Nothing at all like this. None of the human enemies, or even any types of other humanoid enemies I've encountered, talk at all. Not to each other, not to you, no threats, no plea for mercy, just silence. It's silence when they're just wandering around and silence when they're stabbing your corpse. How's that for immersive? And these bandits are just bandits, and I mean that literally. There's no particular reason for them, there's no lore behind them, they're just a bandit. To the extent that when you're going through the wilderness and you come across a signpost, the signpost will literally say up ahead, bandit camp. Who puts a signpost up there saying bandit camp? Is it the bandits? Do they want to advertise their own camp so you know there's some good loot there? Is it the villagers who spend time putting up the sign because they know they don't want strangers coming in and getting bandited? It's not like a natural resource that you want to draw attention to, particularly the bandits. They prefer, I would imagine, to be sneaky and not have people know where they have their camp. Am I missing something here? I'm going to do that thing again. In, say, a game like Skyrim, you go to a place, and that place might have some kind of generic fantasy name like Character or whatever, and it is a bandit camp, as in bandits have moved in and they're being all bandity. So you clear them out, and it's no longer a bandit camp. It goes back to being what it was before, just some random fortress in the middle of nowhere. Okay, enough about that. How's crafting? Crafting is okay, providing you have space in your backpack. The backpack is so important in this game, and it's a real big pain when you get knocked out and you have to go back and reclaim it. Fortunately, it's often not very too far from you, but that has a problem too, because where you're knocked out isn't necessarily the place that you'll wake up again. What I mean by that is, let's say you're fighting a pack of hyenas on the road and they overcome you. you lose your health, and normally in other games it'd be game over. Not in this one. In this one, there's always some kind of contrived reason why you come back to consciousness with a sliver of your health back, and you have to regain your stuff, which hopefully is nearby. Now, where you were before is always different to where you end up. The reason for this is that someone has come along and saved you. I guess the enemies, when they saw that you were at 0 health, decided to go off someplace else, but you get rescued, some guy tries to nurse you back to health, or a huntress or some bandits try and take you to their camp, and then leave the doors open for you to escape. Yeah, I didn't get that either, but never mind. Anyway, you get rescued, you have to start all over again, and that's it. There is no game over in this game. You play as long as you want to, and if you die, you get magically rescued and then put back on your road. Often though, when you die, you go straight back to the nearest city. So if you're in some dungeon somewhere, if you've gone through a lot of the enemies and you're almost close to getting your mission sorted, you take a few hits and you could, depending on how you roll the dice, end up right back at your lighthouse or nearby at the local inn. A lot of time has gone by since then, so a lot of the food you had has now been spoilt, you've developed some kind of weird illness, and you're coughing a lot. Crafting in this game is quite straightforward. You see what you want and you go and get it. If it's a tree, you punch it to get the wood, which is just like in real life. If it's a fish you want, you need some kind of fishing net. If you want to do some mining, you need a pick, that kind of thing. With all of these resources you gather, you can combine them with other resources to make things like arrows, campfires, and various foods for the journey. So a lot of trial and error with this, and a lot of this process creates waste, which you have to get rid of as well. As you'd expect as well, lots of your tools and weapons have degradation, which means the more you use it, the more it starts to break and become less effective, so repairing them as well as replacing becomes a priority as well. But most importantly, you have to look after yourself in this game. If you go out in the wilderness, nothing but your whitey tighties, you will feel the cold. If you go in a desert with 4 or 5 layers on, you will get overheated, so you need to dress accordingly to the weather, which is a good feature, of course. This is a survival game, so you want to try and simulate trying to survive. I get that. It does become a bit of annoyance when you have things like, you are hungry, you are tired, you have developed scurvy, and you have multiple things at once, and you don't really seem to have any way to treat yourself. Obviously with food, you take some food. If you're sleeping, you take a bedroll. If you're thirsty, you have plenty of water. But things like a cold, which you can't seem to shake off, can affect you. Or when your lantern runs out and it's pitch black. So a lot of babysitting meters. And when you get hit as well, when you take damage, you obviously lose health, which is, makes sense. What also happens is that your maximum health gets lower as well. So even if you heal yourself, often you won't be able to heal yourself to 100%. You'll be at like 85 or something, and that happens every time you take damage. So every time you get hit, your maximum health gets lower and lower until healing becomes pointless. And to restore it, you need to sleep and give plenty of hours to it. This is a big game, and there are plenty of things that you can explore and find. Plenty of treasure chests just lying around in various old ruins. You have to get certain keys to access areas which are, around, so there isn't any one particular way of getting to your stuff. And it is cool going into a cave and meeting some kind of creature called an Immaculate and having a nice chat about the existence of life and that kind of thing. Dialogue though isn't too impressive. You get maybe 2 or 3 options to go through. You can't really go on a killing spree like you can do in other games. So if you're wanting to do things like romance characters, well, I haven't really seen any of that. Okay, so that is the crux of Outward. Now, from what I described, you might be thinking to yourself, it doesn't sound that bad, ugly graphics, loading screens, I can make do for a survival game. What's Dan's problem? I'll tell you my problems. How about inconsistent enemies? In one area, I'm able to fight off 2 bandits by myself. I take out my polearm and I go about it. I'm able to hack them both to death, heal, and then go out into the new area. In the new area, I'm sneaking around and suddenly another bandit comes out. The bandit draws his sword, I take out my polearm, we do some dodging, some striking. He then hits me and auto kills me in one hit. I might say 80% health and bam, I'm gone. Okay, start again someplace else. I start again someplace else and immediately 2 wolves start hacking at me. And bearing in mind I'm only at a sliver of my life, so I go down straight away and I start someplace else. Every time you start, it's another loading screen. You then get a loading screen, a bit of information tell you why you dropped and who rescued you, and then it's another loading screen. At times, I've noticed this game will load areas that it doesn't even use, and then you go back to some other area. Like one time when I was playing the game the next day, and I load to the area where I had been defeated, it loads, a bit of dialogue, and then a completely different area loads up. That's 2 loading screens. Another time I'm in this area and I'm just trying to sneak along and I fall down this hill, I guess, and I'm on this plateau. From there I can't seem to get up at all. I'm just wandering around. There is literally no way for me to do it, so my only alternative is to commit suicide and jump off, so then I automatically reload someplace else. Another time I'm walking around this bridge at night and suddenly spike traps come and kill me. I had no idea spike traps was a thing until this happened, but I guess now I know. And there doesn't seem to be any experience to make you as a person better, so I didn't see anything where I became stronger or faster or whatever. I get better equipment, yes, which I can craft and maintain, but nothing where I as a person improve. It does have magic, which I didn't bother with, and you can do traps, which is kind of cool, get enemies to trap themselves with spikes. But the more I progress through the game, the more kind of unfair it felt in terms of combat. And I guess a lot of times you can just walk away. You don't have to fight every enemy you come across. Sometimes it's just not worth it. But after the 4th time in a row I had been killed in the last 20 minutes, I got thinking to myself, Dan, why are you playing this? You're not really having a lot of fun. There doesn't seem to be any point to you going out and risking your life, except not really, if you just want to spend 5 minutes looking at another loading screen to respawn someplace, get eaten again. It really did become a chore, just putting the game back on again and trying once more to swing a bit different, but only to get killed straight away soon after that. Now you can play this game in co-op. I would recommend that if you want an easier experience, but from what I hear, the second person gets a bit of a shaft in this respect, since all the items go to the first person in terms of NPCs giving you loot, and it's all basically based on them and you're just a sidekick in that. Judging by the mostly positive Steam score, I think a lot of people would appreciate this type of game. They do like the whole survival aspect to it. For me, it's a bit of a no. I like the combat, but it was just unfair at times in my opinion. I don't have any kind of investment in the plot, or even barely my own character. It seems like there's a lot more that needs to be done for this game. I mean, enemies that talk, far less loading screens, actual ways for your character can, you know, be a character. For me though, it's 2.5 generic bandit camps out of 5. A lot of people will get some enjoyment out of this game, I'm just not one of them. Okay, thanks for watching this review. I will see you next time with my next one, which I believe will be Far Cry New Dawn. So until then, have a good one, and laters.